अपने देश में अपनी बस्ती में.
A lone divine voice was raised from Qadian, a remote village in Punjab, India, claiming that God Almighty had commissioned him as the Imam and Messiah of the age, and had revealed upon him that I shall cause thy message to reach the corners of the world. This heavenly message was propagated through various mediums. One of the means was the divine convention known as the Jalsa Salana. The promised Messiah, on whom be peace, states,
"The major aim of the gathering is that the sincere members of the Jamaat should be able to derive religious benefits, and at the same time they should acquire more knowledge and advance in their God realization. One advantage is that meeting their friends will broaden their circle of brotherhood, and it will strengthen the mutual ties."
The first Jalsa Salana was held in 1891 and attended by 75 individuals. These devoted companions of the promised Messiah, on whom be peace, came to Qadian, India, the then headquarters of the community, laying the foundation stone to this divine institution. After the partition of the subcontinent, the community established its center in Rabwa, Pakistan. With this migration, the central Jalsa Salana also re-established itself in the new surroundings. This convention not only grew in size and number, but it no longer was limited to a particular location. With missions establishing worldwide, branches of this divine convention was also to be seen across the world, one of them being in the UK.
रोशन है जो सीनों में अज़ाइम के शरारे.
It was foretold by the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, that the sun in the latter days will rise from the west. For the fulfillment of this prophecy, the first Khalifa of Ahmadiyyat, Hazrat Maulana Hakim Maulvi Nuruddin Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, sent a devout servant of Islam to the west.
Chaudhry Fateh Muhammad Sahib Sial arrived in this country on the 25th of July 1913. Ahmadiyyat was introduced to the people of the West, that especially Britain. And then our missionaries, who were, most of them were Sahaba of the Promised Messiah, started preaching at Hyde Park Corner. That was something, that made a revolution in the technique of tabligh, and we got so many converts. It grew and grew and grew until 1924, when the foundation stone of the mosque was laid. It was a huge news for the British press. Most of the British newspapers produced their stories about the opening of the first mosque in London. In 1926, when the opening was made, there were 600 people at the London mosque at the opening ceremony.
बढ़ते ही चले जाएंगे हम रंगे सबा हम हर गा.
It was the attention of the Khulafa of the promised Messiah, on whom be peace, that a new era dawned upon the UK community, resulting in a further expansion of their spiritual training.
The Jalsa in the UK actually started, I believe, in the late 1940s. 1949 was the first Jalsa, and that was held at the Fazl Mosque, and then there was another Jalsa that took place in 1950. But after that, there was a big gap because we don't have any records of Jalsas taking place. Then in the 1960s is where our record actually starts again.
The tradition of the annual convention in the UK started from the era of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih II. However, it became the flagship event of the UK Jamaat's annual calendar from 1964 onwards.
So the dates were fixed for the last weekend of August 1964. The Jalsa was held at the grounds of the London Mosque. In those days, where there is the Mahmood Hall, this was open space. So in this area, we set up not tents, but just a sort of marquees, roofless marquees. And that was the first Jalsa. In 1967, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Salis arrived in this country for the first time after Khilafat. So we had a Jalsa at the Wandsworth Town Hall where an Ijtimai Bath was done at his hand.
Then after that, we had Jalsas that used to take place at Robin Hood Roundabout in Roehampton, where we used to put out marquees and Jalsas would take place there.
Then in 1976, Hazrat Sahab Khalifatul Masih III came and the Jalsa was held at Roehampton Park, and he addressed the Jalsa for 3 days. And now we had good space at the park and we put up the marquees. And it went on for a long time, in Roehampton Park. Once or twice it was held in Hounslow also. But then it became a regular Jalsa from then on. And that is the story of the beginning of Jalsa.
On one hand, the Jalsa Salana UK was going through an evolutionary period, and on the other hand, the political conditions in Pakistan were making it extremely difficult for Ahmadis to practice the faith of Islam.
मालूम नहीं उसको कि ये तंज के निश्तर महमीज लगाते हैं इरादों को हमारे।
वो तालीम जो 1300 साल के बाद फिर जिंदा की गई थी, अगर आपने मिटने दिया तो खुदा आपको कभी माफ नहीं करेगा। अपने हुकूक मिटते हैं तो मिटने दीजिए, अपनी जायदादें छीनती हैं तो छीनने दीजिए। आज इस्लाम की जिंदगी आपसे यह मुतालबा करती है कि इस्लाम के नाम पर हर मौत कबूल कर लें, लेकिन मोहम्मद मुस्तफा के दीन को ना मरने दें, ना मरने दें, ना मरने दें। खुदा आपके साथ हो, खुदा आपके साथ हो और हमेशा इस्लाम के लिए हर कुर्बानी पेश करने की तौफीक अता फरमाए।
These words of the Khalifa became the last few ever uttered at a Jalsa Salana in Pakistan. Exemplary sacrifices were to be made by the Khalifa of the time that were also mirrored by his followers.
रोशन किए हम मशले जा चलते रहे हैं।
Because of the strict conditions, he was not able, and nobody could see that he could operate just as the active guide and leader of the community. He could not give the instructions, he could not deliver the sermon, he could not lead the prayer, and as if there was complete censure on his speeches and activities and all that.
So finally, Hazur decided, and it is a very brilliant part of the history of Ahmadiyyat, how Hazur successfully and safely migrated from Pakistan on the 30th of April 1984.
By that time, the UK Jamaat had already planned its Jalsa, because it was a normal routine that in the month of July we hold the Jalsa. So the program was made, it was all approved and everything was settled. Huzur came. So after 1 month, then I proposed to Huzur that Huzur, this is the program. So what is the instruction about that? So Huzur said that the program that has been made, that is okay. Just change one thing, that the last concluding address I will be delivering.
The first 2 sessions were held in Mahmood Hall, and then the final session took place in Tolworth Recreation Centre.
It was all packed. Hall was packed. After saying the concluding prayer, then Huzur went to the ladies' side, and then he came back to the London Mosque. So that was the Jalsa which took place for the first time in 84 when Hazrat Khalifatul Masih, Rabbi Rahimahullah Ta'ala was present there.
Guests of the Promised Messiah, on whom be peace, initially were accommodated in the households of the UK members, but soon after, guests flocked from across the world to London around the Divine Khalifa. From humble beginnings, the world saw tremendous progress. This was the will of Allah and His divine plan.
When Khalifatul Masih Salis Ramla came and he visited this particular area, at that stage we had no idea that this will be where we would have Islamabad. There's beautiful views if you go on parts of the road, and I'm told that Hazrat Aqdas actually stood on those parts and was inspired by the countryside there.
This inspiration of the Khalifa was to be fulfilled at the hands of Hazrat Khalifatul Masih IV, on whom be peace.
When Hazur arrived, he obviously realized that the Jamaat would require somewhere, and he instructed the Jamaat to find something suitable. And obviously various feelers were put out.
So I remember regarding the purchase of this Islamabad, it was also very interesting. It was sold in an auction, we came to know, and there were some people who were looking after this purchasing plan, and Huzur gave them the idea that 425,000 should be the maximum price of this land according to every judgment. He actually went there first a few days before the auction. He physically, personally went there, and I remember the place where he led the Asr prayer. So next day after the Fajr, he told us that yes, go ahead with the bidding. And the 3 members team, they went there, and the auction went up to exactly 425, and that was given by us. And they were thinking that if it comes with that price, then we are going to go get it. But it so happened that somebody gave the bidding at 426,000. So our members, they thought that, well, it's going beyond us. We can't go. But then they decided within themselves that, well, even if it's a matter of couple of 2,000 pounds or so, then we will pay, and anyway, because it's a good proposal, we want to have it. So they offered 427,000, and luckily they got it. So it was just as accurate, as it could be possible in such a big purchase. He was very happy that Alhamdulillah this property has been purchased. And the same day at 5 o'clock news, it was on the television that a Muslim organization has purchased the Sheephatch School, a property in £500,000.
The land of Islamabad was another gift from Allah the Exalted, and this large piece of land in the beautiful countryside of Surrey was purchased only to serve as spiritual training grounds for the humble men of Allah. With this purchase, new challenges were faced, especially those of administrative nature. Facilities, infrastructure, skills and manpower were lacking to manage such a vast land.
Huzur very graciously thought that the help from the center should be sought. So one big help was that Chaudhry Hamidullah Sahib, who was the officer Jalsa Salana in Rabwa and Wakil Ala as well, he was personally asked to come over here along with some other people. Then he chose some other people to also come and join. So these people were then allocated in various departments, like particularly the Langar, that's a very important area, and some other departments. So under his supervision and guidance, the local teams were prepared.
It was in April 1985 that the first ever Jalsa Salana took place in Islamabad.
In Islamabad, there's an open area which was quite good to accommodate the 2 big marquees. We acquired very big marquees, but still I could say that much smaller marquees as we use now. But it was a different shape because of the financial constraints. We only rented those marquees with the pole in between, in the middle, and there were complete line of poles throughout the marquee. But there was no proper flooring at that time. Just the mat or the carpet was there. But if it rained, then it was very bad condition inside, mud and all that.
And because it rained very heavily, the water managed to get in from the sides into the Jalsa Gah. and everyone sitting on the carpets, had their clothes wet. And then also because we were parking cars on the grounds within Islamabad, because of the heavy rain, it became very wet and muddy, and it became impossible for the cars to move there. And our young Khuddam at that stage actually used to pick up the cars literally and take them out, and they were completely covered in mud.
And I remember that Huzur himself also came out of his residence when he came to know that this situation is there, and just wanted to encourage everybody and saying farewell when the people were going on the last day.
Due to the unique relationship of the Khalifa with his followers, we find that a lack of resources became secondary, and an unskilled community in the coming years, due to the benevolence of Allah, were able to stand upon their own feet. The voice of the divinely appointed Khalifa that opponents wanted to confine, Allah, through new means and modes, made echo across the world.
When Hazrat Aqdas came here, he actually used to do Majlis Irfan 7 days a week initially. And these were being recorded, and also his Friday sermons were being recorded. And then what used to happen is that these were recorded on cassette tapes.
The start of this concept, it started with this advent of the audio and video cassette when the Jamaat started doing that. And it was a laborious task to first to record, but then to make duplicates of those audios and videos, and then to send them to different corners of the world was a laborious task and time consuming as well.
And the recording of the Friday sermon would then be, we had a team here working together who would duplicate them. And there was a duplicator that we had, a number of duplicators. And by the evening, all the duplications were done, and then those tapes were sent around the world to various countries, and that is how communication started.
During the early years, to relay the message of the Khalifa through new mediums was difficult. However, according to divine design, the voice of the Khalifa reached the corners of the world, and a natural progressive revolution took place.
When we started in 1984, we only had about 2,500 to 3,000 people that attended our first Jalsa. And then when we had the first Jalsa Salana in Islamabad, the number grew to about 5,000. Then we see that the next few years it grows up very slowly to 6,000, 7,000. And then in the 90s, more people had started to come here. People from Europe used to come here. Then proper delegations used to come from different countries.
I think the word expansion is an integral part of Jalsa Salana. Always it takes place. And this word is actually taken from that revelation of the promised Messiah ﷺ, which said, Vasse Makanaka. So we have to expand our accommodation, our facilities, our arrangements all the time. And this we have seen, particularly when we are talking about UK Jalsa Salana, we have seen that this has been taking place every year. The expansion was there in number, in the arrangements, in the facilities, and more things were developed, and arrangements were always improving in so many ways.
Every department underwent progress and expansion. The message of the Khalifa was being translated into many languages and relayed live across the world. Alongside this, the infrastructure was vastly improved. Parking facility was expanded, better services were provided for the guests of the promised Messiah on whom be peace, and more land was added to Islamabad.
We had come to a point where the largest markets possible that could be erected in Islamabad were being erected. And we had absolutely no room for expansion. We had, at that stage, attendances about 11,000, maybe 12,000. And that was the maximum. And it was becoming very, very tight. So we started looking. We were actively looking for an alternative site. But in the interim period, we had to do something. Now, we started negotiating with the MOD, Ministry of Defense. They had a site in Rushmore. And this is an unfortunate incident happened at that time, that was the London bombings took place. And of course, there's a huge cry against the Muslims in the press. And this became a very difficult point. But it is such Allah's blessing that, the Ministry of Defense then actually considered our case, and our case went right to the top, to the ministers responsible for defense. And he sanctioned that, yes, Ahmadis are fine and they should be given this. Because Rushmore was right in the middle of the army site. All around us were army installations, barracks, everything. So it was a very sensitive site for them.
Acquiring Rushmore was a great blessing, but it came with its own logistical challenges. The arena had no infrastructure, no electricity, no sewerage or water arrangements.
Everything was a major issue. It was a new experience for our teams, and they were finding it difficult. But with Hazur's prayers and blessings, by the grace of Allah, the Jalsa did take place. And alhamdulillah, it was a huge success, and I think it was one of our best Jalsas up to that stage.
The convention at Rushmore proved to be a great accomplishment due to the prayers and guidance of Khalifatul Masih, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmed, Ayyadahullahu Ta'ala bin Nasr Aziz. But now a further expansion was being chalked out by Hazur Anwar, the procurement of a sizable land to serve as the conventional site for future years.
Diqatul Mahdi was quite an interesting acquisition. What happened was that site became available, and Nasir Khan Sahib mentioned to me that there was this site. We'd been looking for quite a while. We'd looked at airports, and we had looked at sites all around the country to find. But when Allah wants to do something, He brings it at a very convenient location, because this was a site which was very close to Islamabad and in the right location that we were looking. It was surrounded all around with trees, and it was 208 acres with two very substantial houses built on site, a lot of large warehouses. And the price was very reasonable at 2.2 million. It was very, very reasonable. Hazur very kindly came with us to look at the site, and then Hazur gave us the permission to acquire it.
And Hazur gave it a very beautiful name of Hadiqatul Mahdi. Everybody was so full of joy when Hazur mentioned for the first time in his Friday sermon that this new place that we have acquired, I have named it Hadiqatul Mahdi.
We thought that we'd wait a couple of years, and we thought that we'd continue to hold Jalsas at Rushmore for a couple of years, because we'd set up there, we understood the site, But Hazur said, no, we have now got our own place, and we should try and organize the next Jalsa there.
The vision of the Khalifa and the obedience of his followers to immediately start work on the new site of Hadiqatul Mahdi proved to be the key in ensuring the success of the convention.
I think Rush was a preparation for this acquisition, because all the things that we learned, electricity, we started using generators, water, we used storage tanks for water, sewage, we were able to get companies to come and take away the waste. And all of these things we learned while we did Rushmore. And those things were transferable skills that were transferred to Hadiqatul Mahdi immediately.
By obeying the Khalifatul Masih, followers reap full benefit from divine blessings. This faith-inspiring obedience is another means of propagating the true message of Islam.
लो उसके रखते हैं निहा खानाए दिल में जो चांद था और जिसके थे अस्हाब सितारे जो चांद था और जिसके थे.
One year we had lots of rain, and we were not quite prepared for it. And what happened was that the first day everything came to a standstill around the Jalsa site. So there were queues that went back into all the way up to the A3, and there were huge traffic jams. And because we were not in a position to bring in the cars into the Jalsa Gah, because it was completely flooded. So the police became very agitated, and they said, look, this cannot go on, we have to consider what the position is. And we said to them, look, tomorrow nobody will bring their cars here. And the funny thing was, every person he asked, who was passing by, he did his own survey. He said, will you be coming here tomorrow? And everyone said yes. And he could not understand how they were going to come here without bringing the cars. But the thing was that we had made alternative arrangements. We were going to park all the cars at Islamabad and transport people by bus. And we'd also encourage people to come by train. So we'd ran a shuttle service from the station to the... And he continued to be very cynical that day, saying, no, it can't happen. But next day, he was absolutely amazed, because he could not understand the itaat of the Jamaat, that once they were told not to come in their cars, they didn't. And this was something that I think will live in his memory forever. Because then he came and apologized to me, and he said, I did not believe what you said when you said that. But I have seen a miracle, how people are still all here and yet no cars. And this is one of Allah's blessing, how, and the itaat of the Jamaat, how things, when Khalifatul Masih gives an instruction, immediately, everyone followed it immediately. And this is one of our true blessings of Jalsa.
The renaissance of Islam that took place at the hands of the promised Messiah, on whom be peace, is evident to the entire world. The spiritual reformation caused within every Ahmadi causes great revolution in every sphere of life, and difficult hurdles become easy to overcome.
When Hadikatul Madi is basically a farmland, so we are not allowed to have permanent structures there, buildings there or roads there. But these are the things which are required. So gradually, in consultation with the local authorities, we get some permission and some approvals, and we have been able to make certain roads as well, tarmac roads there, and also some other establishments to be used for some storage and other things that was permitted was there. And this year, by the grace of Allah, they have given the permission that we can have a proper built kitchen and a proper roti plant on the same pattern as we have in Qadian and Rabwa. That is in the process of being established here. The plant in Islamabad is functional, and that will continue to work. And the new plant in Hadikatul Madi will also come in, into action. And so in this way, Alhamdulillah, all the participants will be able to have the fresh, baked on-site bread, and they will be really very happy to enjoy that.
The kitchen of the Messiah is not only providing physical nourishment, but most importantly, the spiritual nourishment is being provided in this convention, not just to the attendees, but in fact, the entire globe through MTA.
The first Jalsa Salana was transmitted live, was 1992, although only to Europe, but that was the first Jalsa Salana that went live. 1993 was the second Jalsa where the international batch started, and that connected the whole world, and the technology that we were using during the Jalsa, that made it possible to have the concept of international batch.
From 1994, when formally 24-hour global transmission started there, then of course the Jalsa Salana was televised live in full. Previous to that, we used to purchase the time, and Huzur's speeches used to be televised. But then all the speeches, all the proceeding goes there. And that is something which has made this Jalsa a global Jalsa.
With the continuous progression of media, The community also propagates the message of Islam and the directions of the Khalifa through new streams, making this Jalsa Salana into a global sensation.
It was destined for these days, for this time, the time of the promised Messiah, that Islam was to become victorious. And that was a huge task. So God provided all these means. Today we have the Jalsa streamed across the world, not only on the satellite, but also on all sorts of gadgets and all sorts of mediums. And it's, people are connecting it from an international Jalsa. It has become an interactive Jalsa.
The international bed, the international coverage, the international messages and comments all make this unique convention into a global event. Kings sought blessings through this divine convention. Every year, the world witnesses further expansion, further development, and further progression of this Jalsa. From the convention being held at a recreation hall to the purchase of Islamabad, from the community celebrating its centenary in 1989 to the initiation of the International Bed Ceremony in 93, from the launch of the 24-hour broadcasting channel MTA and the social media to the celebration of the Khilafat centenary in 2008. New locations, bigger marquees, the ever-evolving administration and setup, and most importantly, the increase in participants are only down to the decree of Allah. The volunteers, with the guidance of Khalifatul Masih, will play their role in running this unique event, only to win the pleasure of the Almighty. The Jalsa Salana will always progress, expand and grow, and through it, the world will continuously, spiritually better and revitalize itself.
देते हैं खबर सुबह के बुझते हुए तारे देते हैं खबर सुबह के बुझते